In a busy, bustling city lived a young courier who had dreams that seemed impossible to reach. He worked hard every day, delivering packages from one place to another, trying to make a living and survive. His life wasn't easy. The young man didn't have much. He came from a humble background, where money was always tight, and the future felt uncertain. He had a small apartment in a crowded neighborhood, shared with a couple of roommates, where the noise from the streets could be heard all day and night. His days were long, filled with running around, delivering packages, and sometimes dealing with difficult customers. Each day felt like a struggle. He didn't have time for himself or any luxuries. But despite everything, he kept going, hoping that one day his hard work would pay off. He dreamt of a better life, one where he didn't have to worry about the next paycheck or wonder if he could afford rent. The young man had always been a positive person, trying to stay cheerful no matter how tough things got. His friends admired his attitude. Even though he didn't have much, he was always willing to help others, whether it was lending a hand to a neighbor or listening to a friend in need. But deep inside, he knew that if things didn't change, he would be stuck in the same cycle for the rest of his life. On one ordinary day, something unexpected happened that would change everything for him. He had just finished a delivery in a busy part of town, a place where the streets were lined with high-end stores and expensive cars. This wasn't a place he visited often, but on this particular day, he had a package to deliver to a fancy building there. It was a sharp contrast to the rough neighborhoods he usually worked in. As he stepped out of the building and looked around, he saw her, a beautiful woman, standing near a car, looking lost and a little troubled. She had bright eyes and long, flowing hair, but there was something more than just her appearance that caught his attention. It was her expression, a mix of worry and confusion. For a moment, the courier stood there, unsure of what to do. He wasn't used to dealing with people like her, wealthy, well-dressed, and elegant. She seemed out of place, almost like she didn't belong in this part of town. The young man, seeing that she was struggling, didn't hesitate. He walked up to her, offering to help. The woman seemed surprised at first, but her face softened when she realized he was genuinely trying to help. He asked if she needed assistance, and she explained that her car had broken down, and she didn't know what to do. She looked frustrated, and the courier could see she wasn't used to being in such a situation. Without thinking twice, the young man offered to help her with whatever he could. He knew a little about cars and tried to see if he could get it working again. He wasn't an expert, but he wasn't going to leave her stranded. He gave up his lunch break, not caring about his own needs for a moment. It wasn't much, but he knew that sometimes the smallest acts of kindness could make a big difference. The woman watched as he worked on her car, still looking a bit lost, but grateful. She had never expected someone like him to come to her aid. The young courier, despite his own challenges, did what he could, not expecting anything in return. Little did he know, this simple act of kindness would be the beginning of something that would change his life forever. After the young courier had helped the woman with her car, something unexpected happened. The woman, who had been anxious and worried moments before, was now smiling at him. She seemed relieved, even though the problem with the car wasn't completely fixed. There was something about her smile that made the young man feel good, even though he hadn't solved everything for her. It was like the simple fact that he had tried made all the difference in the world to her. She looked at him and thanked him several times, her voice soft with gratitude. "You really didn't have to help me," she said, looking at him with appreciation in her eyes. The young man just shrugged, trying to play it off as if it was no big deal. But deep down, he was glad he could do something kind for someone, especially someone like her, who seemed to have everything but still needed a little help. The woman's name was Emily, and she was in town for a business trip. She was originally from another city and didn't know much about the area, which explained why she had gotten lost and had trouble with her car. She explained that she didn't want to call a tow truck because of the expensive fees, so she had been trying to figure things out on her own. That was when she had run into the young courier, who seemed to have come out of nowhere, offering help without hesitation. As they spoke, the young man realized that Emily wasn't just beautiful on the outside. There was something genuine about her, something that made her stand out from others. She was kind, intelligent, and seemed to care about the people around her. She talked about her job, her travels, and her life, but there was also a vulnerability in her voice. She wasn't used to asking for help, which made the young man admire her even more. After a while, Emily took out her phone and called a mechanic, who promised to send someone over to help her with the car. The mechanic was going to take a while, so Emily and the young man continued talking while they waited. She learned more about him, how he worked as a courier, how hard his life had been, and how he had never really had the chance to pursue his dreams. She listened carefully, genuinely interested in his story. The young man wasn't used to sharing so much with someone he had just met. He was always so focused on working hard to survive that he hadn't given himself a chance to think about his future. But there was something about Emily that made him open up. She wasn't judging him, nor did she seem to pity him. She was just listening, and that made him feel seen, something he hadn't felt in a long time. As the mechanic finally arrived and took over the car repairs, Emily asked if there was anything she could do to repay him for his kindness. At first, the young man refused, saying it was nothing. He didn't need anything from her, but Emily insisted. She told him that people like him, people who took time to help others even when they didn't have to, deserved to be rewarded in some way. The young man felt a bit uncomfortable, but he couldn't deny that her words touched him. As the conversation came to an end and Emily prepared to leave, she gave him her business card. "If you ever need anything, don't hesitate to reach out," she said with a warm smile. "I'm happy to help however I can." The young courier was shocked. He didn't expect this woman, someone who seemed so far removed from his world, to offer him anything. But she had, and he left with her business card in hand, wondering if this truly was the start of something new. Over the next few days, the young courier couldn't stop thinking about Emily. He found himself looking at the business card she had given him, wondering if he should reach out. It felt strange to him. He was just a delivery guy, someone who worked hard to get by, and she was someone who lived in a completely different world. What could someone like her possibly want with someone like him? But as time passed, the curiosity grew. He had helped her without expecting anything in return, and she had been so kind, so genuine in her gratitude. It wasn't often that he encountered people like her, people who took the time to recognize his efforts and treated him with respect, despite their differences. It made him wonder if there was more to life than just working endlessly for survival. One evening, after finishing his deliveries, he sat down in his small apartment, looking at the business card again. Maybe he was being foolish, but a part of him wondered if he should reach out. He wasn't sure what he was hoping for, perhaps just a thank you or a simple note. But he felt a strange pull, like there was something more to this connection. So, after a long pause, he decided to send her a message. It was a simple text, nothing too complicated. He just wanted to thank her again for her kindness and say that he hoped she had gotten everything sorted with her car. He didn't expect a response right away, but to his surprise, she replied quickly. Her message was warm, full of gratitude. She thanked him again for helping her and mentioned how much she appreciated his kindness. She also asked how he was doing and how work had been. Her tone was friendly, as though they had known each other for much longer than they really had. The young courier couldn't help but smile as he read her words. He had expected something brief, but this felt different, genuine, and kind. They continued exchanging messages over the next few days. Their conversations were light at first, just friendly chats about work, life, and small things that made them laugh. Emily shared some of her experiences traveling, and the young man talked about his daily life, his struggles, and the small victories that made it all worth it. The more they talked, the more he realized how easy it was to connect with her. Emily seemed interested in getting to know him better, and he, in turn, found himself opening up more than he had ever expected. He told her about his childhood, how he grew up in a neighborhood where opportunities were scarce, and how he had always dreamed of something more, but had never really known how to get there. Emily listened with understanding, never judging, and always encouraging him to keep working hard for what he wanted. One afternoon, after a week of messaging, Emily suggested they meet for coffee. The young courier was hesitant at first, not sure if it was a good idea, but she reassured him, saying it would be nice to catch up in person. So, after some thought, he agreed, feeling both excited and nervous at the same time. When they met at a small cafe in the city, the young courier felt a little out of place. The cafe was quiet, with soft music playing in the background and people dressed in stylish clothes. He was still just a delivery guy, but Emily greeted him with a warm smile, and everything felt suddenly easier. They sat down and talked for hours, sharing stories and laughs. It was like they had known each other for much longer than a few weeks. By the time they said goodbye, the young man realized how much this simple connection had already begun to change him. Emily had made him feel seen and heard in a way he hadn't experienced in a long time. For the first time in a while, he started to believe that maybe, just maybe, his life could be different. As the days passed, the young courier began to feel a shift in his life. Emily had become more than just someone he had helped on a random day. It felt like they were developing a real friendship. Their conversations grew deeper, and he started looking forward to hearing from her. She always had something interesting to share, and their chats brought a sense of comfort to his otherwise hectic days. He had always been focused on working hard, but now he found himself imagining a different future, one where he didn't just live from paycheck to paycheck. One afternoon, after a long morning of deliveries, the young courier received a message from Emily that caught him off guard. She was asking him to meet for coffee again, but this time, she had a different idea. "I know you've been working hard, and I wanted to talk to you about something," she wrote. His heart raced a little. What could she possibly want to talk about? He had grown used to their friendly chats, but this message seemed different. When they met up again, Emily was already sitting at the same cafe they had visited before, waiting with a warm smile. As usual, the young courier felt a bit out of place in the fancy surroundings, but he quickly reminded himself that Emily didn't care about any of that. She saw him for who he was, not as someone who needed to impress her, but as someone worth getting to know. They began talking casually at first, but soon, Emily grew more serious. "I've been thinking," she said, "you have so much potential, but it seems like you're stuck in a job that doesn't reflect who you really are." The young courier wasn't sure how to respond. He had always been grateful for the job he had, but he knew Emily had a point. He wasn't truly happy working as a courier, even though he had learned a lot from it. It was just a way to survive, not something he felt passionate about. Emily continued, "I know some people in the business world, and I've seen a lot of young people just like you, people with the drive and the heart to do something great, but who don't have the right opportunities." The young man felt a mix of emotions. On one hand, he was touched that she was thinking of him and trying to help him, but on the other hand, he felt unsure. Could he really take a step into a completely new world? He didn't have a college degree, and his experience was limited to deliveries and odd jobs. Was he really capable of something more? Seeing the hesitation in his eyes, Emily smiled gently. "I don't want to make you uncomfortable, but I believe in you," she said. "I think you could do something that not only gives you a better life, but also allows you to help others. If you're open to it, I could introduce you to some people who might be able to offer you guidance or even help you find a job that fits your skills and interests." The young courier was speechless for a moment. No one had ever believed in him like that before. Sure, his friends and family had always supported him, but this was different. Emily wasn't offering him a handout. She was offering him a chance to change his life. He could see that she truly cared about helping him, and that thought made him feel both grateful and overwhelmed. "I don't know if I'm ready for all of that," he finally said, his voice quiet. "But I'm willing to try. I want more for myself, more than just getting by every day." Emily's eyes lit up at his words. "That's the spirit," she said. "I'll help you get started. We'll take it one step at a time, and you'll see that you're capable of more than you think." For the first time in a long while, the young courier felt a spark of hope. He wasn't sure where this new path would lead, but he knew that with Emily's support, he had a chance to change his future. It wasn't going to be easy, but for the first time, he believed it was possible. As they parted ways that day, the young man felt a sense of excitement he hadn't felt before, ready to take the first step toward a new chapter in his life. Over the next few weeks, the young courier's life began to change in ways he never imagined. Emily had kept her promise and started guiding him through the process of exploring new opportunities. She introduced him to some of the people she knew, professionals who were successful in their fields. At first, the young man felt out of place in these new settings, surrounded by people who seemed so confident, well-dressed, and accomplished. He was used to working in rough neighborhoods, dealing with the pressures of delivering packages and managing his daily struggles. These new environments felt foreign to him, and he wasn't sure if he truly belonged. But Emily was patient with him. She encouraged him to push past his doubts and focus on his strengths. "You've got a lot more going for you than you realize," she would say, her words filled with kindness and confidence. "You just need to believe in yourself." Slowly but surely, her encouragement began to sink in. He started to realize that he had more potential than he had ever given himself credit for. The more he learned from the people Emily introduced him to, the more he began to understand that success wasn't about where you came from or what you had. It was about your determination and your willingness to work hard. Emily also helped him by giving him advice on how to improve his skills. She suggested he take a few courses to build up his knowledge, even if they were online and didn't cost much. He took her advice to heart and signed up for a couple of classes that focused on business and communication skills. He didn't expect to be a genius overnight, but every new lesson he learned made him feel a little more confident in himself. The courses were challenging, but they gave him something to focus on outside of his daily routine, and that made him feel like he was moving forward, not just surviving. As time passed, the young courier began to see small changes in his life. He was becoming more disciplined in managing his time, making sure that he balanced work, learning, and taking care of himself. His confidence started to grow, and with it, his ambition. He realized that he wanted more than just a job. He wanted a career that allowed him to use his talents and make a real difference. He wasn't sure exactly what that looked like yet, but he knew he was capable of something greater than delivering packages all his life. One day, after completing a particularly challenging course on business management, the young man felt a sense of accomplishment. He wasn't sure how far he had come, but he knew that he had taken a huge step forward. Emily noticed the change in him too. She could see that he was becoming more confident and focused. "I'm really proud of how far you've come," she told him one evening after they had a long chat about his progress. "You've shown so much dedication and strength, and that's what matters most." Her words meant more to him than he could express. Emily had believed in him from the beginning, when he had barely believed in himself. Now he could see the path ahead of him more clearly. It was still uncertain, and there were many challenges to face, but for the first time, he felt hopeful about the future. The young courier wasn't the same person who had helped Emily with her car all those weeks ago. He had transformed, not because of any one big opportunity, but because of the small steps he had taken, learning, growing, and believing in himself. He knew there was still a long way to go, but with the support of Emily and the lessons he had learned, he felt ready to take on whatever came next. The future was no longer something to fear. It was something to look forward to with excitement and determination. As the young courier's confidence grew, so did his sense of purpose. Emily's support had opened his eyes to the possibilities that lay beyond his delivery job. He no longer saw his life as something that would always be limited to small, short-term goals. Instead, he started to envision a future where he could make a real impact, not just for himself, but also for the people around him. One afternoon, As he sat in his small apartment, he received an unexpected call from one of the people Emily had introduced him to. It was a businessman, someone who had been impressed by the young courier's commitment to learning and self-improvement. "I've been following your progress, and I think you've got what it takes," the man said over the phone. "There's an opening at one of my companies for an entry-level position. It's a big step up from what you're doing now, and I believe you could handle it." The young courier could hardly believe what he was hearing. He had always dreamed of getting a chance like this, but never thought it would come so soon. His mind raced with questions. Was he ready for something like this? Was he qualified? He had never held a job like this before, and he wasn't sure if he could truly keep up with the demands of a more professional environment. But as he thought about it, the doubts started to fade. He remembered everything he had learned over the past few months, the courses he had taken, the guidance Emily had given him, and most importantly, the new confidence he had found in himself. It wasn't about being perfect, he realized. It was about being willing to try, to keep learning, and to put in the effort. With a deep breath, he accepted the job offer. The businessman explained that it wouldn't be easy at first, but that he saw potential in the young man. It was a big challenge, but it was exactly the kind of opportunity he had been waiting for. The courier couldn't believe how quickly his life was changing. A few months ago, he had been delivering packages without any real direction, and now he was about to start a new career. When he told Emily about the job offer, she was thrilled for him. "I knew you had it in you," she said with a proud smile. "This is just the beginning, and I can't wait to see where it takes you." The young courier couldn't help but feel a deep sense of gratitude for her. Without her belief in him and her guidance, he never would have had the courage to take this leap. He had always been afraid of failure, of not being good enough. But Emily had taught him that it wasn't about avoiding failure. It was about learning from it and continuing to move forward. The first day at his new job was both exciting and nerve-wracking. He felt out of place at first, as if everyone around him had it all figured out. But instead of letting the fear take over, he remembered the lessons he had learned. Be patient, ask questions when needed, and keep pushing yourself to do better. He worked hard, staying focused and eager to prove himself. And slowly but surely, the people around him began to take notice. Months passed, and the young courier's hard work began to pay off. He wasn't at the top of his field yet, but he was growing every day. He felt proud of how far he had come, but he never lost sight of where he had started. Every time he looked back on his journey, he remembered how a simple act of kindness, a moment of helping someone in need, had set everything in motion. His life was no longer just about surviving. It was about thriving, about pursuing something greater than he had ever imagined. And as the young man continued to grow in his career, he knew that he had a long road ahead. But for the first time in his life, he wasn't afraid of the journey. He had a purpose now, and he was determined to keep moving forward, one step at a time. As the months went by, the young man found himself settling into his new life in ways he had never thought possible. The job that had once felt like an overwhelming challenge began to feel more natural. At first, there had been moments of doubt, times when he wondered if he was really cut out for this kind of work. But now, he was gaining confidence every day. He wasn't the same person who had started this journey. He had grown, learned, and proved to himself that he was capable of more than he had ever imagined. Emily continued to be a big part of his life. Although their friendship had started with a simple act of kindness, it had turned into something deeper. She had not only guided him professionally, but also became a true friend who celebrated his small victories and supported him during challenging moments. Whenever he faced a tough situation at work, he knew he could count on her for advice. Her encouragement had given him the strength to keep pushing forward, even when things seemed difficult. One evening after a long week at work, he found himself sitting in his apartment, reflecting on how far he had come. He had started out as a courier with barely enough to get by, unsure of what the future held. But now he was part of a team at a company, and he was no longer struggling just to survive. He felt a sense of pride in the work he was doing, Even if it wasn't exactly the dream job he had once imagined, it was still a step in the right direction. He was building a career, learning new skills, and slowly but surely earning the respect of those around him. But as he sat there thinking about everything, a new realization started to take shape. It wasn't just about the job or the money. He had started this journey because he wanted to change his life, but he was beginning to see that the real change had happened within him. He wasn't just a man working to make ends meet anymore. He was someone who had dreams and goals, who believed in himself enough to pursue them. In the midst of his thoughts, his phone buzzed. It was a message from Emily. She was checking in to see how he was doing. As usual, her message was full of warmth and encouragement. She reminded him that no matter how busy life got, it was important to take time to appreciate the journey and the progress he had made. He smiled as he read her words. It had been her belief in him from the very beginning that had kept him going. Without her, he wasn't sure where he would be. The next time they met for coffee, the young man shared with Emily how he was feeling. "I'm not where I want to be yet, but I can see the progress," he said, his voice filled with gratitude. "I feel like I've learned so much, not just about work, but about myself. I didn't think I was capable of this kind of growth." Emily smiled at him, her eyes filled with pride. "You've always had this potential inside of you," she said. "It just took some time for you to realize it. I'm proud of you." Her words meant everything to him. He realized then that this journey wasn't just about climbing the career ladder or achieving success in the traditional sense. It was about learning to believe in himself, to take risks, and to embrace the challenges that came with change. And as long as he kept moving forward, he knew he could handle whatever came his way. The young man's life had been transformed, not by luck or fate, but by his own actions and determination. He had taken the first step by helping a stranger in need, and that simple act had set off a chain of events that had led him to a new and brighter future. As he looked ahead, he felt ready to take on whatever challenges life would throw at him next. With Emily's continued support and his newfound belief in himself, he knew that he could achieve whatever he set his mind to. In the end, it wasn't about the job or the success. It was about the journey and the person he had become along the way. And that, he realized, was the most important change of all. As time continued to pass, the young man's life took on new meaning. He was no longer the person who had struggled to make ends meet, working long hours as a courier, barely managing to get by. He had become someone who had built a new life from scratch, someone who now walked into his office each day with a sense of purpose. It was hard to believe how much had changed in such a short time. The job he had taken that once seemed daunting now felt like a place where he could thrive. He had gained the respect of his colleagues, and his hard work was starting to pay off. Though the road hadn't always been easy, the young man now understood that true success wasn't something that came overnight. It was the result of consistency, dedication, and an open mind. He had learned to embrace challenges and see them as opportunities for growth. Through it all, Emily remained a constant in his life. Their bond had only deepened as time went on. She had helped him believe in himself when he had doubted his abilities, and she had shown him what it meant to work hard for what he wanted. She had been his mentor and friend, guiding him with wisdom, but also allowing him to make his own decisions. It was her belief in him that had inspired him to take chances and seize opportunities he never thought he could. One evening, as they sat together at a small restaurant, the young man looked at Emily with gratitude in his eyes. "You've changed my life," he said quietly, his voice filled with sincerity. "If it wasn't for you, I don't know where I'd be. I've learned so much about myself, and I'm proud of where I am today. I don't think I could have done it without you." Emily smiled warmly, her eyes shining with pride. "You've done all the hard work, though," she replied. "I just helped you see what was always there. You believed in yourself when it mattered, and that made all the difference." The young man felt a wave of appreciation. Emily had never asked for anything in return for her kindness, and yet she had given him the most valuable thing someone could: belief in his own potential. He realized that what she had shown him was more than just how to succeed in a job. She had taught him how to live with purpose, how to always keep pushing forward, and how to be grateful for the journey, not just the destination. As he reflected on everything that had happened, the young man thought back to the moment when he had first met Emily. It had been a random encounter, a simple act of kindness that had led to everything. He had never imagined that helping her with her car would lead to a life-changing transformation. He had always thought that success was something out of reach for someone like him, but now he knew better. Success wasn't just about the career or the money. It was about the choices he made, the actions he took, and the person he became along the way. Years passed, and the young man continued to grow in both his personal and professional life. He eventually moved into a higher position at the company, and he was able to use his experiences to help others who were starting out just like he had. He became a mentor to younger employees, offering them the same guidance and support that Emily had once offered him. He knew that he could make a difference in their lives, just as she had made a difference in his. Looking back, he realized that the moment he had helped Emily had been a turning point, not just in her life, but in his as well. It had been the catalyst for everything that had come after. What started as a simple act of kindness had led him to a new future, one filled with opportunities, purpose, and a sense of fulfillment. As he sat there, reflecting on all the changes that had occurred, he couldn't help but feel an overwhelming sense of gratitude. He had come so far, and though he knew there would always be more to learn, more to experience, and more challenges to face, he was ready for whatever came next. He had learned that with hard work, belief in oneself, and the support of others, anything was possible. And with that knowledge, he was ready to face the future with confidence and hope.